here's a really one where it's totally redundant. You send it to the other party, they send a red line back, but they forgot to red line it, right? And so now you have to hunt through the document and figure out what they changed. That is the worst, and you're just blowing money trying to find an edit that you don't, and now they don't know where it is, and you don't know where it is, and so you're blowing money to have someone figure it out. That is the worst one. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rethinking with Legaltech. This is a special podcast. Today is the business version, and we have Aishwarya from Speed Legal and Matt from ATAX.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm
awesome.
Happy to be here.
Nice. So yeah, as I mentioned, this is a special version. Usually, Aishwarya is running the legal ops version of Rethinking Legal Ops, and this time we are going to focus on the business side and dive deep into the understanding of how legal is impacting also the finance aspects of every business, of course, and the interlinks between the two. So we really believe that, also the transformation of law in terms of the role of attorneys and lawyers are changing. They are not just meant to read contracts and do very manual work, but it's more going toward an advisor and a trusted advisor and a strategist within the company. So how CFOs, VP of finances, CEOs work strictly with legal is the topic of today and the next podcast as well. And today we will focus with Matt on that.
That's great.
So Matt, can you tell a bit more about yourself? A quick introduction.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a fractional CFO. I work with mostly e-commerce brands and e-commerce agencies, a couple SaaS companies and a couple startups as well. But I work with clients in the UK, Austria, Wales, US, and Canada. And basically the goal is to help my clients scale sustainably, make sure they don't run out of money, make sure we optimize their profit margins. And, at the end of the day, the hope is that they can get rid of the stress that comes with managing cash and margins and then where is this whole thing going? The goal is to help them answer that and make a plan so that they don't have to worry about it. So
what are some of the key things that you look at a business? Like, is there any KPI that you measure? Of course, it depends on the startup, but
Yeah. So we definitely, when I join with the new client, we build a financial model and we look at what are the key drivers within their business. And I would say, a lot of things are customized for the business, but there's always a few that are the same. So contribution margin is a huge one that we're looking at. Gross margin, net margin, some liquidity measures like, how is your business able to meet obligations with current cash flow, things like that. And then we'll obviously add things that are custom to the business.
And I'm sorry, I didn't introduce, of course, Aishwarya because everybody knows her. And I jumped into the question because I'm very excited. But Aishwarya, please say a word.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aishwarya. I'm the head of legal and partnerships at Speed Legal. And it's wonderful to do Rethinking Legal Ops with you every Thursday. And I'm even more excited to launch with Hans-Paul the business version of Rethinking Legal Ops. So great to have you as our first guest for that, Matt. And very happy
honored.
to be here.
I'm honored.
And thank you, guys. And remind us, Aishwarya, which episode are we in?
This is the 23rd episode. So it's been about 5 months that we've been doing this.
Yeah,
wow.
And we kept it consistent, right? Aishwarya managed to do it every week. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm very excited to have you here, Matt, together with Aishwarya. And we will make it dynamic. So we will ask some questions. So you guys will be able to see both perspectives from a legal head and from operational CFO C-suite mentality as well. Cool. So interesting contribution margin. That's for sure very, very important. And if you're a SaaS company, of course, you have different metrics, different values compared to a manufacturing, of course. Mm-hmm. But jumping to the legal aspects of those numbers. So how much spend? So are you actually currently working with legal documents as well in your regular work week?
All the time. Yeah. Clients will send me things to review, whether it's a contract from a potential marketing agency, SaaS platform, vendor, customer. I see all kinds of contracts all the time, even fundraising term sheets, safe agreements, shareholding agreements, like all of it.
And do you enjoy that part of the work, like reading contracts, or is something that you're trying to give someone else, or?
Well, nobody really enjoys reading contracts, I don't think. But there is a part of it. Yeah, right. So there is a part of it that I do like, and that is the challenge of understanding what's going on and trying to. It's like a puzzle, I guess. There's paragraphs here and there and everywhere and definitions, and you have to figure out how they all fit together. So to be honest, it might sound a little bit nerdy, but I do like that part of it. Because the other thing is when you can understand a contract well, it allows you to really advocate for someone and mitigate adverse potential conditions and things like that. So yeah, I like some of it. If it could be faster, that would be nice. But yeah.
Sure, yeah. Do you like it? I think you were nodding. So.
I have to, right? No, but I mean, I do fully agree with Matt there. I mean, reading contracts can, as a process, become pretty dry. And as a lawyer, too, so the most exciting aspects is to be able to, understand this language and bring value to your company, whether that is protecting them from liability or anticipating any risks, or getting a more sort of putting them in a more favorable position. So I think those are the most exciting parts. And it would be great if we could automate or make more efficient the process to get there, instead of having to spend more and more time reviewing a lot of contracts. So I guess from my perspective as a lawyer, I could use more my creativity and my skills a little bit better if I did not have to manually read all of them. So yes and no.
And don't worry, guys, if you don't understand words such as liabilities and stuff, we will jump into it and we'll dissect it for you later. So Matt, double click on something. So you mentioned that you actually like the fact of, the interlinks between one section and another section of the contract. Are you referring to the drafting part when you are actually able to paint, or more also when you receive contracts from outside and you need to evaluate them?
Oh, so I don't do a lot of drafting, to be honest. Like that's primarily, counsel would do some drafting. I do, when I'm on a client side and we are drafting a contract to go somewhere else, like I'm obviously part of that process. But I think I review more contracts than I draft. And so like Aishwarya said, it can get pretty boring and frustrating, but usually like I don't mind. Like it's like I say, it's fun to put the puzzle together to help your client be in a better position.
And how long did it take to get you there? Because in order to like that part of, you need to understand it, I guess, right?
Forever. It took me, I would say, 2 years of reading a lot of contracts. I'm not a lawyer, but I worked in a private equity group, and so I was a CFO, but I was also deal side. So I would be doing documentation with investees and reviewing their edits and putting edits back and reviewing the lawyers' edits. And so doing that for 2 years. And also, we had investors of our own. And so like reviewing the investment agreement, all these things. So reviewing very dense, very long contracts took me 2-3 years. I've begun to figure out which are the parts that are the most important. And especially when you want to know, like when you have a question, knowing which parts answer the question. Now I can read them faster than I used to. I used to have to read the whole thing, right? That's where like when you start, you have to read front to back. Now, when you have a question, okay, this, we can go look and figure it out. But it took a lot of hours and a lot of frustration to get to where I am now.
And I do want to quickly chime in and also add that, like, sometimes even though, you can have, experience and like reading those documents, you get to a place where you can look at, like the key things, but still like, from like a general counsel perspective, from people that I've talked to, some of them have actually told me that even 20 years into, practice, knowing all the different types of clauses that you could possibly see, sometimes they read it front to back and then back to front, especially when they're like, working with a new type of vendor, just to see if there's been any like minor tweaks and whatnot. So that part of the work, unfortunately, is still something that, in-house counsels or even like at law firms, like lawyers would still do despite their all their experience.
That's a lot of work. And but now you're focusing on a different sector, right? You're not in investment, right? You're more on e-commerce.
Yeah, so I work with mostly e-commerce brands and agencies, and so like the types of contracts I'm reviewing have changed more so. They're SaaS, vendor, sometimes shareholding agreements, sometimes purchase and sale if my client wants to sell or buy.
Cool. And so, how much delay, or let's say, how much time does it take to to go through these contracts on average? Of course, it depends, but if you want to group them into categories, or
Yeah, so SaaS contracts, they're you're talking minimum an hour probably, and the more important and the potential risk, the more time you spend, obviously, looking at contracts. So I work with some folks that are buying a business right now, and we've spent 30 hours in documentation, reviewing, editing, redlining. So it's a lot. Yeah.
Acquire or sell in part?
We are acquiring,
Okay.
or these people are acquiring. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 30 hours. Yeah. And then, of course, time is money, right? So I guess you can, yeah. Any thought on this, Ajoria?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to actually ask Matt, did you have any outside counsel that you used for this, or did you work with
100%. Yeah. I'm of the mind where I can do a lot, but I still wouldn't do it without outside counsel because I'm not a lawyer. And so I'm good enough where I can reduce legal fees with how much I know, but I'm still not good enough to cut the lawyer out of the process. No way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think that's absolutely right. And with all the new types of legal tech tools that we're seeing, that's sort of kind of the assumption a lot of times is that it's just going to like entirely replace lawyers when it's not. It's going to reduce their involvement in areas where they don't necessarily need to or even want to be involved. And just I know you're asking the questions, but like I'll just to get like more inputs, like I'll just have a it'll follow up. So do you think that did you feel like you actually needed an outside counsel for all of those 35 hours of work, or what parts of it do you think were unnecessary but you still had to outsource this because you did not have any other way of maybe automating it or doing it more efficiently?
Oh, there's a few times where I got really busy and I had to pay the lawyer to review a new draft. So typically, if I'm available, I'll review all the drafts myself. As you know, you send it back and forth and the changes. So, but then if you're busy and you have other work to do, I had to ask our lawyer to review a draft where I would normally do it. And so then you're talking anywhere from $300 to $600 an hour just to do a review that I could normally do, but I was just too busy, right? Yeah. There's lots of parts where maybe you wouldn't need someone.
So it's more on the drafting part or on the review or both?
So I would say I would never, well, I wouldn't say never, but I would rarely draft a purchase agreement myself.
I mean, checking your drafts, of course, not you.
Well, so there have been times where I would take term sheets, or I would take an older term sheet and I would modify it for my purposes, but I'll still send it to the lawyer to check it before I send it to the other party. Yeah.
Okay. And that's more of the use case, or more the use case is when you get an agreement from outside and you need to another template?
Well, I would so I think what Ashwari asked is, are there times where the legal services were maybe redundant? And definitely, all the review. So when here's a really one where it's totally redundant. You send it to the other party, they send a red line back, but they forgot to redline it, right? And so now you have to hunt through the document to figure out what they changed. That is the worst, and you're just blowing money trying to find an edit that you don't, and now they don't know where it is and you don't know where it is, and so you're blowing money to have someone figure it out. That is the worst one.
Yeah, and it is more common than you would think. That type of stuff it does happen.
Yeah. There is not much AI need for that actually. But anyways, it's just a diff checker. But anyways, yeah, I mean, luckily there are some solutions who help you with that. But we also saw that there is some resistance for some legal expert to adopt new technology, of course. But it really depends. I think it's becoming more and more standard, and also businesses are adopting those technologies. So that helps as well to make it more widespread. Cool. Sorry, you want to add something, Andrea?
No, I was just chiming in and saying, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think it would be great to jump into an example with a contract now. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Let's do it.
So we discussed about SaaS agreements, and I know in e-commerce is pretty popular, as you mentioned as well, Matt. So let's start with those agreements, the SaaS agreements. So starting, you decide who's going to take it first, but I would like to hear both perspectives, the legal and the CFO and business side. What are the aspects that you care the most about those contracts? So what are the key provisions and the key things you're looking at when you get one of those in your inbox?
Matt, I'll let you go first.
Okay. So for me, the really big ones are termination, how do you get out of this contract? Can you get out of the contract? How much notice do you have to give to get out of the contract? Because I hate being in situations where the particular software is horrible or the service is horrible and you're trying to get out, but you're locked in for a year. And so what do? Right? So that's a huge one, is looking at termination clause. The other one is pricing. You want to, anytime pricing is referenced, you want to know where it is and what it's really saying. So is pricing flat? Like, are there any pieces that are maybe weren't talked about? Are there price increases baked in to a contract? Things like that. Renewals. I would want to look at the renewal clauses just to see, like, do you need to do something to renew, or does it auto renew without asking you? Do they have to tell you before they renew? Like, that's another, because again, if you get locked into software that you hate and it just renews without them telling you, well, then if it's in the contract, then sometimes they have you, right? And then sometimes it's important to understand, like, the maybe I don't know the word for it, but the arbitration part, like, where conflict resolution. How are these things resolved? In what courts? My home country or the vendor's home country or jurisdiction? And do they bind me to arbitration in, like, some random place in California that I don't live in? Like, like, things like that. Penalties, maybe. I'd look at is there a penalty for early termination or non-payment or things like that? Those are I think those are my biggest ones. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and from a legal perspective, so all of the ones that Matt mentioned are extremely, extremely important, especially the ones about like payment terms and auto renewals. And and every lawyer has kind of their own approach and perspective on it. So I'll just like humbly share mine. And for me, whenever I see like any sort of like SaaS agreement, the first alarm bells that go into my head are all about IP and confidentiality and like data security and things like that. That. And each of the way that I look at it, my perspective would differ if I am a lawyer for a vendor or a customer. So say I'm a GC for someone subscribing to a SaaS platform, then one of the top most things I care about is what are they going to do with all my data that I upload? Are they GDPR compliant if I'm in Europe? Also consideration in the US, of course. Are they going to, encrypt it? Are they going to store it in a secure manner? Are they, because with a lot of the AI tools, data is important. And I'm going to use my very like lawyer technical language here, just like try. But, I would care about whether anything I upload or anything I share with this platform, is it going to be used for them in, maybe maintaining or improving their services, and what's going to be the nature of that. Basically, where is my information going? What is going to be the confidentiality? The other things I care about is whether...
Can I interrupt and ask you a question, Ashwarya? Is it true that if where they store the data is important too, right? Because if I'm Canadian and it's stored in a US data center, like the NSA or I can lose my data, right, jurisdictionally?
Yes. So the jurisdiction really matters. So not as much as far as I know. So it's like the biggest problems is when you're transferring European data to like a US server. But within the North American, continent, if it's like Canada and US, usually, just like a simple standard contract clauses, like, like that are GDPR compliant, that would usually do the trick. But some of those contentions get like pretty heavy when it's, European data coming over here, because there's just, it's kind of, everyone just like believes that like big American companies like, Google, Facebook, like no one's like, keeping our data secure and things like that. So those sort of negotiations, they're like very, very, they get very intense and contentious, and those just tend to be sometimes, like one of like the biggest like deal breakers or deal makers when it comes to, because no GC would ever want to like sign off on that. Like no one wants that responsibility.
Gotcha.
And it gets like further complicated. So if you're like a large conglomerate, like you've got offices in China, you've got offices like in Japan, you've got offices in Australia. There's like all sorts of different considerations, like what part of your company's, what location of your company's data are you sharing with which country? And then what are the different regulations that apply to these different countries? So those sort of things, they get like pretty complex, but the biggest ones are definitely between the Europe and the US. So definitely looking at data security, and then of course confidentiality, and seeing that is there anything in this agreement that can bind, the service provider, that I can sue them for? Like, if they let someone, like a
Right.
consultant, use my data or something like that, is there anything in this agreement that allows me to sue them? Or am I agreeing to let them, hire anyone and, share my data with anyone? And then on the converse, if I am the service provider, then I care about putting, some of the provisions in that allow me to, securely and of course in an ethical way, utilize the data that I need to, make my services better. If, I'm an AI-based service, I need to put in protections in places where, I can potentially get sued, by the customer, whether that's with regard to, who the data is shared with, confidentiality. And then also, because if I'm providing them a license to use my service, I want to make sure that they don't end up, copying the work that I'm doing, or end up having some information with which, they can just build their own like platform, or like, disclose it to competitors. So those sort of things, in addition to everything that you just said. That's a very long-winded explanation.
And I'm going to add one more that I should have talked about, is the SLA. So service level, like the guarantee, uptime guarantees. I reviewed a contract. A friend of a friend said, "Hey, can you help me look at this?" And I looked at it for them. And at the end of the day, there's nothing they could do. But this SaaS provider, I forget the name, provided no uptime guarantees. And so like there's literally, if they did not keep their stuff maintained and running, there's literally nothing you could do to get out of the contract, because there was no guarantee whatsoever of uptime. And so that's a huge piece. It's like, what are they telling you they will actually deliver? And in this contract, they basically said, this is as is where is within the and it's buried in various places in the contract, but they made no service level guarantees at all. So that's a big one that you're going to want to look at. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you both. I mean, I'm trying to take some notes and understand the different perspectives. So if I can summarize them, I mean, tell me if I got it wrong, but on one side, Matt seems to be focusing mostly on, on the money aspect of the contract. Like, can I get out when I want, not being locked in? Am I paying what what we discussed? Am I also arbitration? You mentioned, do I need to fly somewhere else? Do I need to, are there some costs or, Whereas, Julia, I mean, of course, you were focusing on other aspects, but as a lawyer perspective, interesting. You told us, can I sue them as a buyer, or can I get? So it's interesting, these two different perspectives that I see. Of course, different backgrounds and different. But I may be wrong. Maybe I got a wrong interpretation, but that was somewhat.
No, I think that's
No, I might actually amend what I think, because I think reviewing the IP is actually a really good thing to do, to know, like, can they, if I always talk from the position of a client, of course, but can you build your own IP off this? Do they own everything you create with their platform? Like, that's actually huge. And I reviewed a contract just last week where the vendor, I've never seen this before, the vendor waived any and all right to anything that they create based on the client work that they're doing. I've never seen that in my life. And I told my client to take that contract because anything that the vendor makes, they get to have as a client, like in perpetuity, with the vendor releasing claim to it. And so that means, like, if they make a new process based off what they're doing for you, like, you can have it. Anyway, so yeah, I think IPs. I've changed my mind. I'm adding IP to my list too.
Yeah, because you can have like some serious financial considerations attached to it.
Nice. That's what the podcast is for, to learn, and hopefully other people here listening to us are learning something. And yeah, one more question. I know we're going toward the end. Like, we try to keep half an hour, but what's the thing that whenever you see, you just say, no, I'm not gonna sign it? Like one thing, or well, maybe the two things, or a couple of red flags, big red flags.
For me, with SaaS, it's definitely service level guarantees, SLA. I don't remember what the A stands for. I swear I remember what the A stands for.
I think this agreement.
Service level agreement. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So if they make no guarantee that their service will work, I don't want to sign that.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me, it's about and would differ for like every. I think like for lawyers, we always are giving out disclaimers, but for me, it's definitely like software ownership, and it's just so hard for me to just pick one, because I mean, there's so many things that would jump out from a contract to me that would just make me not want to sign it. But the one that is basically always non-negotiable, as Matt was also pointing out, I don't want the work or the algorithms I create for the client to be just like work for hire and then they get like all IP over it. I want them to have a limited revocable, licensing right over it, where, it's still all my IP. They can just, use it. And, which is why, like, just like in my day-to-day work at Speed Legal as well, just never never really thought of just like having that like one thing and just amplifying that, like, this exists, don't sign this contract, but having somewhat like of a dashboard, just like that makes me see everything wrong with the contract. I think that is what I'm always looking for. So it's like very hard for me to just like pick one thing, because there's software ownership, there's confidentiality, there is data security, just so many things. So hard to pick one. I would like to see everything.
That is an interesting point, Aishwarya, because you're right. There isn't, like, it's all trade-offs and compromises. I say that I would just not sign something for an SLA, but what if the pricing was really, really good? Then would you try? Of course. So maybe what we could do is using your software, because your software will highlight some key things. If a client could come up with a scoring mechanism per section, you could not sign contracts that scored less than X or Y. That's a really interesting use case for you guys, because that would be a really quick way to score a contract.
Thank you for the spoiler, Matt. Yeah, I actually want to say, luckily.
Oh shit! Sorry, did I?
No. I think no. Thank you for the. Maybe I didn't use the correct English word, but I meant thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure if it was. But anyways, yeah. So thank you for putting that on the table. I actually wanted to say that. Luckily, there are tools. There are tools for that, and you don't need to spend 2+ years as Matt did. But of course, he gained some asymmetry of information, which is can be used in many ways, which is good. But yeah, so that's something we are doing at Speed Legal, basically, helping you to understand if your contract complies, or verify if it's complying with the standard, and being that market standard or your standard. If you're a bigger company, you may have your own standard. And yeah, the score idea is actually very good. We currently have numbers for each red flag and matching criteria. Eventually, we will create a score, but at the moment, we are dissecting the contract. But the objective is to actually get a score.
I didn't even know. So for the listeners, I hope I did not set that up on purpose. I had no idea you guys scored stuff like that. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, that's cool.
Yeah, well, that's another reason to try Speed Legal. It's free, by the way, and you can use it, and it scales as you scale. So starting for free, and then the more contracts starts with some plans. But yeah, I think I would say thank you very much for being here. Do we have any other question for Matt or Matt for us today?
No, I just want to, like, the scoring. I know we've spoken before, but I don't. Anyway, that is cool, and there's a reason why I think that it's cool. So let's say you want to find a new SaaS to solve, let's say ERP or something, right? So you get some quotes, you get some draft agreements, throw the draft agreements into Speed Legal. The scores will come out, and then you can kind of rank your vendors in terms of the contract score, and then you could use that to, like, push a few vendors off the table if their contract sucks, and then or you could dig in. But anyway, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah,
that's what we call red flag table, and we trademarked that because we really believe in that, and hope we can showcase it to everyone soon. And yeah, so thank you, everyone. I mean, it has been great, and I think we wanted to cover another contract, but I think it's enough for today. People also can digest this SaaS agreement, all the aspects that we have touched today, from IP to renewals to penalties, and then going down to the GDPR, of course, and all the data and the new AI tools coming up with their own things. So I would say, Matt, we would love to have you again, maybe with another contract. Maybe a term sheet or something that you have used in the past. And maybe if you, any listener is running, I think you're focusing with any specific vertical cohort or e-commerce or any type of startup.
Oh, yeah. I work with basically anybody that does a significant percentage of sales online. If they're all wholesale, for example, there's just not enough data for me to be super effective. Not my niche, basically. So if you're doing a lot of sales online, or if you're an agency serving those kind of clients, I can help. And if you're doing anywhere from like 2 to 20 million a year in revenue, that's kind of the band that I work in as well. And again, 8x.co is where you can find me, or look me up on LinkedIn, Matt Putra.
Sounds good. And Aishwarya, any final word on your side?
Yeah, I absolutely loved being here. And like the one thing that I loved the most was, like I think like Matt, you had like, some strategic insights into like, how you look at contracts. And then I was talking about how a lawyer would look at it. And then towards the end, we sort of just integrated that and just came up with this, thing where how cool it would be to like, rank the different risks involved in a contract, how you can use that to negotiate or vendor selection and things like that. I think that's exactly what Speed Legal and Rethinking Legal Ops is about, is finding that collaborative ground. I don't call it a common ground because there's no conflict here, but finding areas for lawyers to be strategic partners with C-suite professionals, rather than being the people that tell you not to do things, or like give you really long explanations and things like that. So very excited to continue the conversation offline as well, and this has been great.
For sure. That's cool.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you everyone for listening. And join us for the next episode. Maybe we will not be the business one; we'll be the legal one. But we will be having more of the business and integrating with the standard one. And yeah, so join us in this mission of making contracts accessible to everyone, easy to understand, easy to negotiate, easy to sign, using AIs and humans. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Joy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.